mad if I complain. I long to hear my sweetheart's voice again. Oh, hello, dear, yes, this is me. I'm many miles away. I'm lonesome and I just call up to play. Is there still room for me? Neath the old apple tree where there once was a
The Bellwether Dispatch. Week the 3rd, Part the 1st. What it is, and what it is not, being the same thing. A week has passed since the burning of the bears, and I could still smell the acrid cotton smoke of my crime, and deeper still, and tingling round my heart, the nauseous burn of shame, not exactly for the act itself, but for fleeing the credits, as it were. It's 4 a.m., and already I'm on the path, with a gas lantern to light my way, heading to the mill to receive the 3rd Bellwether Dispatch. But the reason I'm off so early is this. I have no idea how I will do it, but I have insisted to myself that I somehow get down into the Cottis, to the bottom of the hole. For as I stood last Sunday at the Cottis edge, watching the bears burn, and hundreds of fire-put-outing solutions formed and fizzled in my brain, should I call the fire brigade? Should I leap down into the hole and roll about? Should I fetch objects, crutch machines and so on, and toss them down into the flames? A mysterious woman arrived to do my work for me. I did not see this person, but only heard a woman's voice call upwards from the hole, "What in heaven?" There was a blasting whoosh of a fire extinguisher as a white cloud of foam shot over the flames. A crackling orange darkness bloomed upward, and then the woman's voice called out again the same phrase, but questioning now. "What in heaven?" I cupped my hand over my mouth as though kidnapping myself from behind. I badly wanted to call down to her, to find out how in the world she was there in the first place. But then, wasn't I the awful cause, the fire starter, the arsonist, and to speak to her would surely sign my name to the dark deed. So I pulled myself away, forced myself down the dark hall, sat myself mutely in Ronald Vinegar's chair, as all manner of hooligan shame warmed my face. Then as quietly, as earnestly, as uncriminally as I could, I received the 2nd Bellwether Dispatch from the innocent bystander and transcribed it on the typewriter. And as I left the mill for the Lemon Times last Sunday, I realized that the only thing I cared to do, the only thing that was important to me now, was to get myself to the bottom of the Cottis, to find out what on earth, what literally down in the earth, was going on. We have all manner of tools and devices to assist us in the going up. Ladders and lifts and rockets and pole vaults. Of course, these many things will often, as stairs, eventually take you down. But that is their subsequent rather than their initial use. Up is first, and down the almost incidental afterthought of having made a thing that rises. So we love a thing that brings us up from down, but we haven't much in the tackle box to get us down from up, besides the humble caveman's rope. And at my age, a rope tied off and drizzled down to the bottom of a hole would simply provide a slightly more professional way for me to fall. For I can hardly tie the laces of my boots without losing grip of the strings. As helpless as that, I spent the entire week plotting and wondering as I tried to worry out how I might get myself to the bottom of the hole. For a while I wondered if there was such a thing as a balloon suit, some inflatable outfit that military persons or astronauts use to quickly, however ridiculously, get down into holes. And then, while acknowledging that a parachute would never work, wondering if perhaps it might, or could be made to through some other preparation. If I leapt from a biplane and pulled on the cords, might I not quite easily steer myself through the mill roof and down into the Cottis? Rotten schemes and shoddy plots is all I had. My final solution, and it is the very essence of my existence, character, at least, was this. I would wake quite early the next Sunday, as I have. I would go to the mill, as I am. I would return to the Cottis, and at the moment I am nearly there. And once there, as I just about am, I would simply and absolutely insist that I get to the bottom, which act of utter demand I now undertake, the intensity of my want being the lone ferryman of my journey down. So here I am, sleepy, standing at the edge of the Cottis with my gas lantern, brought, incidentally, of course, to see my way around, but as well to differentiate myself from the candle-chucking bear burner of the prior week. Though confession lurks at my lips, I am still quite on the lam as far as that. After some moments by the Cottis, dozing here and there and almost falling in, I revived enough to realize that some well-meaning action, however feeble, might be required, a token of my intent. So I returned to the main mill floor and gathered a pair of crutches and filled my pockets with ancient matches, and thus, with my gear of purpose, I promptly resumed my earlier method of getting to the bottom of the hole by falling asleep beside it, which, as it turns out, did the trick. For in the falling looseness of my standing nap, I released the tools I had gathered, first one crutch and then the other. It was as the second crutch tumbled from my hand that I heard the clang of my salvation, and I went instantly to my knees at the edge of the hole, and stared, and glared, and hoved my lantern down, where I saw, just a few feet below me, how my dropped crutch had lodged itself inside the rung of a down-going ladder. A sharp, victorious thrill shot through me. I didn't think, but swung my legs around and dropped over the side and began to descend into the Cottis. Now, little youngins, come gather round. Gotta listen out for that tick, tick sound. Means the teddy bears are all on fire. Everyone goes down. Gotta get everyone under. I had hardly begun my journey down when my foot slid off against the crutch, jammed between the rungs. I did not fall, exactly, but flapped outwards, flag-like from the pole of the ladder, in a sudden gust of accident, so roughly wrenched that I let slip the gas lantern, which drooped and sailed down into the pit, revealing my new habit, apparently, my new Sunday ritual, wherein, should the opportunity arise, I must drop whatever handy flame into the hole and set fire to as many bears as possible. I didn't linger, but scrambled, antique person style, which in fact disposed me to a kind of fevered deceleration, slowing down with increasing shudders, fumbly fingers, and a loss of rhythm in the finding of the next rung down. But I felt I was racing, at least, and doing the best I could until, sadly, 10 feet from the ground, I rather ran out of ladder, and therewith runglessly fell the rest of the way down. There were bears, of course, to break my fall, to chasten the violence, although they were on fire, which modified the style of the rescue. But I landed upon their burning, snow-like softness, face down, as though dropped from my ceiling onto my mattress. A shocking soft slap that soon revealed a prickling, awful heat. I stood quickly as warm water flames coursed up my legs, feeling an extra, separate, vigorous shot of pain in my ankle, as though one of the bears had bitten me. But ankle later, I thought, as I danced to the side to a less on-fire spot and began tossing flaming bears into the darkness to burn out alone, one by one, in hopefully less flammable zones. At some point satisfied, illuminated only by the encircling, torch-like bears crackling in the periphery, I put my attention to my ankle. It was hot now with injury, and numb and granular, as though something had been freshly born inside the bone and wished to break free of its egg. I limped dead-leggedly along, and by the time I finally stood upon the dirt floor, I realized I might be stranded there, for I could no longer put pressure on the foot. I took a little hop to see if one might still be something of a hopper, but I hadn't much in the way of a second hop to match the first, and that was when I spied the old crutch. I had brought, or dropped, exactly the medicine I required. So I hopped and sorried my way to the first crutch and got it under one arm, and then turned to find the second. And I was not noble thereafter, but I was mobile again. Above me, the rounded wall of the Cottis rose, and I could see now that the whole was not of earth and stone, but of a heavy black wood, that something like railroad ties had been stacked and vertically set, and as though the whole were not a hole, but a kind of silo. To my right, the Cottis wind drew bare smoke into darkness. I crutched about and extinguished the still-burning bears with the miserable method of stomping each one with my good foot until, nearly done, one bear left and leg raised for annihilation, I realized two things: that this little on-fire fellow with his somewhat melted sword was none other than friendly Geronimo Teddy, and second, that I should plunge myself into darkness if I stomped him. I bent tediously down and grabbed friendly Geronimo Teddy by a warm paw, and so, becrutched, be-burning bared, arms and hands quite full of dearly unwanted things, I began to follow after the escaping smoke, swinging over the crutches with my sword-wielding, fire-headed bear, and stumbling off into a windy, off-shooting passage. What in heaven? I called out now and then into the passage, not for rescue, but as a kind of sonar to get a sense of the place. A tunnel, a cavern, an underground lair. My voice bounced with increasing depth and shine around the space, and soon the picture the echoes made was of a vast cathedral space, not some muddy mine shaft 100 feet below ground. I continued deeper, my only light from friendly Geronimo Teddy, who was gripped down between palm and crutch handle. Crutch after crutch, until soon the air cooled and the wind ceased, as though the space had once again further opened up around me, as though I had finally found the still and hollow center of something vast. What in heaven? I turned in a slowish circle, looking for some clue as to my way forward. No longer was I in a passage or a tunnel, but in some under-earth amphitheater. And then, well in the distance, and at the faint edge of sight, a dozen blinking red and green and yellow dots fidgeted in their patterns. I rushed to them, crutch by crutch, the bear dimming all the way, running out of burnable cotton in direct proportion to my arrival at the blinky lights. When Friendly was down to his last blue drop of flame, still some yards from the bank of lights, I quickly grabbed the matches from my pocket and lit one just as the bear went out, crutched forward, lit another match, dropped the old one, crutched forward, and on in this sinister gauntlet of matches and crutches I went, until reaching the bitter end of the very last match, where I found myself standing before a long, sweeping walnut table pushed against a wallboard instrument panel. On the desk, scattered binder notebooks, teacups, fountain pens, and at the far end, a very old machine that I supposed might be a Calligraph. Beside the old typewriter, stuck in a little black tray, the pale thumb of a lone candle. I crutched for it, flame singeing my fingertips as I touched match to candle wick. And there in candlelight I remained for quite some time, calmly bathed, bewildered, injured, covered in soot, with melted pants and burned-up boots, and yet somehow in excellent spirits, the sort of mood that one hopes not to disturb through any thought or action, perhaps like an eagle on a blissful day, soaring in endless winds and nothing but wind himself, or a little girl at the beach, lazing among the kernels of warm sand, little more than the sand herself, or as a... My reverie was interrupted, as there, on the table before me, untouched by human hands, the Calligraph had come to sudden life. The sheet of paper tucked inside its plate and scrolled upwards, and of themselves the keys began to strike. From one side of the Calligraph there spurted 3 thick cables, commuting directly up into the switch box mounted within the bank of blinky lights, which lights were now pulsing brighter and in patterned synchrony with the tapping of the typewriter. What in heaven? I said, as the carriage returned and the paper crawled upwards, and I was able to read the dictated lines. On Monday, as a mountain spotter, woodcut ink by herb and water. Tuesday into forest crowns, 2 miles closer to the clouds. Wednesday spy the cairn of rock, twixt vale of Welch and Dickey Walk. Wester winds of Thursday marches, 20 boots and brushy larches. So Friday at the toppled tree, for Saturday the stick-made key, as Sunday find it all alone, the moss-clad thing, the treasured bone. What in heaven? And what should have been the final, greatest shock of my day fell to nothing as the walls around me flickered with fresh light, and I turned to see in the darkness a candle-bearing figure coming toward me. "Ronald," the woman called out, "is it you? Have you come home at long, long last?" Those curious about inaccurate weather reports, or eager to uncover a portion of the buried treasure of Amory Snow, or those who simply like postcards or subscribing to things that are free, may sign up by sending their name and address to bellwetherdispatch@gmail.com. If you would like only to see the postcard, make that intent known, and you will be given a secret address from the internet, which shall reveal it. Each postcard, real and virtual, will contain clues to a small pleasing treasure to be found somewhere in New Hampshire. A bag of doubloons is what the contents most resemble from the days of Amory Snow. Those finding the treasure are requested to take only a single sample of what is to be found, and to leave the rest for others. Finally, the only payment the town of Lemon requires is that you send photographic proof of your treasure finding, of yourself with the treasure at the secret treasure site, and that you send such images to bellwetherdispatch@gmail.com, that we here in Lemon might then proselytize in this manner, and achieve the great profit from multiplying 7 billion by the cost of stamps and subtracting that by a figure otherwise known as 0. Further information about the treasure hunt and postcards may be found at radioghost.com. Lastly, these rains of strong, strong bees. P.S. Infinity.